She's at the gym. She sees the protein bar vending machine and she picks out this really cool looking new brand that's been advertised. She then gets on the train home and starts eating the bar. She's like, this has a nice nutty, chocolatey flavor. She gets on the platform to transfer to another train and she starts reading the back end of the protein bar. It says made from Acetia domesticus. She's like, what is this new chemical? It's crickets. Like the insects? Yeah, crickets. Protein powder from crickets. She then looks at the other half in her hand, is like, and she knows it tastes fine, and she knows it's safe. She relentlessly finishes this bar, but she's not sure how she feels. You know that, like, kind of like that. Okay, in the time frame between 2021 and 2023, the European Commission approved 4 insect species for human consumption. A yellow mealworm, migratory locust, the house cricket, and finally, the lesser mealworm. And all of these went through safety reviews. We all know that Europe is one of the strictest places in terms of regulation. So these went under some stringent testing from the European Food Safety Authority. So it means that cricket flour, mealworm powder, and locust proteins can now be legally put in food and sold all over Europe. Well, the EU. And they're found in protein bars, pasta, flour blends, and other snack products. The interesting thing is industry expected this to be quite a big turning point, but it wasn't. I'm not surprised if you have never tried any. If you are, let me rephrase this. If you are from a European or Western world, I'm not surprised if you haven't tried these insect-based products, because it didn't seem to catch on that well in the Western world. One of the biggest European mealworm producers, Insect, came close to collapse in 2024. And Bear Grylls, you know our Survivor guy? He had cricket protein bars, which I thought was a great product a person fit, but they disappeared from mainstream shelves pretty soon after they were produced. A 2025 analysis in The Grocer described the sector as stymied by regulatory hurdles, conspiracy theories, as well as what's called the yuck factor. And what all this points to is the science and everything said that this is good. However, the Western consumer said no. Okay, so about 2 billion people eat insects as part of their daily diet from parts of Africa, Asia, and Latin America, where it has actually been a food tradition for thousands of years. The disgust is not human universal. It is specifically Western, which means this whole barrier is not a biological barrier. It's a cultural one. It's a learned response that runs so deep that it kind of feels like an instinct for people in the Western world. Okay, so Paul Rosen, who is a professor in the field of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, who has spent a lot of time studying the notion of disgust. And I know we're using quite a big word here, and it's not meant to be in any offense in any way to anyone who, eats this and it's actually delicious and they don't have this notion of disgust. But I just want to talk about it from the lens of the Western world just for a little bit. So bear with me on that. So in studying the notion of disgust, and he specifically focused on food, he ran an experiment on this. And I think it's quite apt that I explain it here. And because it captures the problem quite precisely. So he took a cockroach, like those household cockroaches, and he sterilized this thing. This thing was bacteria, dirt, whatever free. He then dropped that cockroach into a glass of apple juice. Then removed it out, the apple juice. The apple juice in all ways was chemically unchanged because that cockroach was sterilized. Then he asked people to drink it. The people had obviously known that the cockroach was dropped in and taken out. And people wouldn't. And he told them the cockroach was sterile, all is fine. He said, it's actually even safer than me sticking my fork in and going around in this apple juice. Still, people wouldn't drink the juice because knowing that it was safe made no difference to the feeling that they would have when they're like, drinking the juice. I don't know if you can relate on this. For me, when I thought about it, I was like, ooh, I don't know if I could drink that. I don't know, even though I know it is completely sterile. And I was like, ooh, I see where this is going. And this is what Rosen calls the law of contamination. Disgust is not triggered by what something is, but what it has been in contact with. Hence why our apple juice, in this example, is kind of disgusting because it was in contact with a cockroach. And for people, the idea of contact is enough. And the funny thing here is you can't argue with someone out of this. As Rosen put it himself, reasoning with people doesn't help. The best thing is exposure. Disgust that we have here, it actually evolved as a disease avoidance mechanism, like a fast, automatic signal to reject potential contaminants before the rational mind has time to process and assess them. And it's been useful for most of human history. The problem is, it can't tell the difference between like a rotting carcass and farm-raised mealworm in a controlled facility. It kind of just like fires for both. And industry recognizes this, and what the game plan on this is to hide the ingredient. I don't know if you know, watch Mark Rover, but he always says hide the vegetables for kids. Here they're hiding the insects for adults. Cricket flour, alternative protein, Aceta domesticus. Remove the visual cues, process it into a powder, fold it into something familiar. And this somewhat helps. Because if you don't take a second look at things, it doesn't matter and you still get the nutrition from the thing. Like alternative protein bars, you still get your 10 grams or 20 grams of protein from your protein bar. It just doesn't come from whey powder, doesn't come from pea powder, but comes from cricket powder. But removing this like visual element of an insect from the food, yes, it reduces this initial aversion to, ooh, I don't know if I can do this kind of thought process. It then raises a further question, because if we're doing this, if we're hiding it, we've kind of said the only way someone gets used to something is through exposure. And if we keep concealing it, are people actually being exposed to the side of things? Because it would be quite nice to normalize this, no? Our protein bar that we spoke about in the beginning story, the one she bought at the gym, it's an experiment to test if a cultural response to something like this can be changed. Western insect disgust is not something that's hardwired. We've discussed this. The aversion of insects as food is a learned behavior and transmitted culturally, which means, in principle, it can be unlearned, right? But research into how disgust actually shifts in populations tells us something a little bit important about the timeline. This behavioral change, it changes through social cognition. And it's not like we would think, oh, we just brand it differently, we change the name, all that kind of stuff. That's not going to work. What's going to work is watching other people be okay with eating it, and without flinching or without being like, ew, what is this? Think about sushi here, if you're not kind of following my drift. Sushi, it's raw fish. For Westerners in the 1970s, the concept of raw fish was probably revolting to them. But nobody persuaded them to eat it because, oh, it's nutritional, it's whatever, da-da-da-da-da. What persuaded them was other people eating it and not being disgusted and being like, oh, this actually tastes quite nice. So the idea of incorporating cricket protein powder, flour, insect, what into things, it might be a slow shift to a new norm here in the Western world. We say that it comes from social cognition. If an influencer got a brand deal about insect protein bars, a big one, I don't know, I can't even think of a massive influencer, and they infiltrated down, it feels like quite a quick pipeline to potentially have a lot more people eating this. And you know what? People would be influenced by that person to eat them. And that notion of disgust might slowly start to disappear. But whether this changes behavior in one generation or it takes another 3 generations is still unknown. But I don't know. I've got a feeling that it could come quicker than we expect here in the Western world. And there's a whole side of it that might actually be way more environmentally friendly, especially because everything these days is labeled protein, what, everywhere. Oh my gosh. So, again, I'm talking completely from a Western perspective here. And I know insects are eaten all over the world. And some people, the notion of disgust does not exist there at all for them with that. So, please, I'm not trying to be culturally insensitive at all. I am just taking it from, let me say, from my anecdotal experience. To be fair, I have eaten insects before, but I did have that, I don't know how I feel about this thing back in South Africa. I had that disgust notion to it. But if we're trying to be more sustainable in the world and we're trying to, it comes into the debates. Are you okay with killing a cow? And then are you okay with killing a cockroach? Like, that debate comes in, and then someone can argue, oh, just because it's small, it means you can care less about it. I don't know how I feel about it. Still, the idea of eating a cockroach, like, gives me the heebie-jeebies. But maybe it's going to become a thing in the future. Like, who knows? Those meal shake things that people have, like, maybe they're all made with, like, cricket powder, protein powder. We don't know. We're just drinking, like, a meal drink. Anyway, I hope I didn't make you guys check the back of your protein everythings. Anyway, check you on the next one.